Well, hello everybody, this is Tim Green, the Rattle Magazine. Welcome to your critique of the week. It's Friday, September 12th. So glad you could join me. Let's see who we've got here. Brian O'Sullivan, Tom Barlow, Winston Munn's here. Brian Sullivan, of course, our reigning prop poet of the month. We got Nancy Tunnell, Dee Coleman, Tara Meslick-McMahon. Chelsea McClellan is here. Paul Buckner, Maria Berg, Jamie Thomas, Shelley Kay. Sarah Rashid Khan is here. Bryn Pope. Mary Keating, good to see you, Mary. Rose Lennard, across the pond. Got Holly York here. Kimberly Gibson Tran, Lynn Schilling. Christina Nueven. Dick Westheimer is there. Dick points out we had the time wrong. Yeah, I guess it saved it wrong or whatever. But we're live like we always are. Let's see. I made the show links a little late because we didn't have any poets to invite. Anyway, so I kind of forgot to do that. Since next week's Rattlecast is going to be revealing the Rattle Poetry Prize winners, which is really exciting. Let's see. Oh, and Kimberly says, I have fun news, actually. The poem I brought to Critique of the Week many months ago just got selected by the Viewless Wings podcast, so I get to record and have it published with them. That's great. Congratulations, Kimberly. Always love to hear stories like that. All right, so, yeah, we're going to do that Critique of the Week thing. What we do is look at poems, talk about what works, talk about what doesn't, how to make them better, where they can go, all that kind of fun stuff. I'll leave as many comments as I can in the chat windows. This is really valuable for poets to hear actual feedback about what an actual audience of strangers thinks about their poems, what gets lost, what doesn't. All that stuff is really good. So leave as many comments. I'll pass as many along, either on YouTube or Facebook if anybody's actually there. Oh, Donna Best and Hemet. Oh, hey, Hemet. Great to see you. Yeah, Hemet's over on Facebook. Good to see you, Hemet. Yeah, Facebook doesn't show the video to as many people live as it used to. It's like after the fact viewers mostly there, but we still stream it. All right. So anyway, let's take a look. And also, if anybody is here who has submitted a Critique of the Week submission in the last few months or ever, really, that's active still, let me know and we'll get to it next. I was scrolling through trying to find familiar names. We did have Jemina Alisaveda, who was on Critique of the Week. I saw that name in there, but on the Rattlecast last week. Haven't seen anybody else scrolling through the submissions who's a regular here. I want to make sure we get to regulars faster than everybody else because you contribute so much by being here, helping not only all the poets, but me too, learn what everybody thinks about poems. It's really nice. Sandra Fees says she's got one, and Paul Buckner. Okay, great. Okay, so let's see. Does this still work? Okay. Let's see. We'll try it this way. Yeah, we've got a Sandra Fees, and we've got a Paul Buckner. Okay, let's do your poems now. Yeah, from March. Okay, let's do Paul's first. And we got looks like we have a short poem, and then we'll see. Pay me another short poem. This is Paul Buckner's. Mary Ellen's got one too. Katie Scruggs Galloway. Okay, great. So I hear, yeah. Bryn Pope says, I plan to submit, but wanted to make sure I was participating first, even though I don't really have much advice. New to writing. Well, great. I'm so glad you're participating, Bryn. And definitely, leaving a few comments, letting yourself be known here, it'll actually be much faster. If you, if I notice your name and it's somebody who participates, then I'll try to get to them as soon as I can. All right, so let's start. And this first poem is by Paul Buckner, who from Evanston, Illinois. No general questions. He's got two in separate submissions, which is fine, although I might not notice in other cases, but the way I looked it up worked really well. Let's take a look. So here's the first poem. Transitions. It's a tradition to stay or not, or to weigh the weight. It happens as I speak, and simultaneously stop speaking, and simultaneously continue to speak, as I disappear and reappear, as though I never appeared at all. Transitions. Interesting poem. Let's read it again more slowly. It's a tradition to stay or not, or to weigh the weight. It happens as I speak, and simultaneously stop speaking, and simultaneously continue to speak, as I disappear and reappear, as though I never disappeared at all. So I really like the concept of this poem. And there's some wordplay that I really like a lot. It reminds me, the one element, it still feels, because we have no sense of like image or setting or who's speaking, it's a little harder to connect with this poem than it is. It reminds me, though, of let me put in just in case you're not familiar. I think most people are. It's Mark Strand's most famous poem, Keeping Things Whole. Let's read that really quick and see how it's a similar sort of tone, a similar contemplation, and I'd say a really similar like level of thought. Like it's a really deep, intricate, kind of complicated thought we're doing with both of these poems. But with Mark's poem, we get a sense of the speaker just a little bit and how much that helps bring the poem to life. So let's look. I guess I'll look at it courtesy of the Poetry Society of America, maybe, or maybe that's hard to fit it all on one page. Let me go to I'm surprised it's not at like there it is at the Poetry Foundation. Yeah, the Poetry Foundation has our back. Okay, so here's this. This is Keeping Things Whole. In the field, I am the absence of field. This is always the case. Wherever I am what is missing. When I walk, I part the air, and always the air moves in to fill the spaces where my body's been. We all have reasons for moving. I move to keep things whole. And so that's the Mark Strand. But see, the difference, and it's such a small thing, it seems, but in a field, I am absent, the absence of field. So just with that one sentence, we get an image and a sort of a place we are. We're sort of located, at least. We're in a field, and then we're a person in a field that is the one thing that is not the field, which is a really fascinating concept, but it also serves as locating us in sort of time and place, even though, it's an abstract kind of time and place. It's a vague kind of field, but it still gives us something tangible to hold on to. And this poem, Transitions, is a similar, feelings and discussion about it, but we don't have any sort of sense of a place or sense of a location or sense of a speaker. And so we end up sort of being disembodied from it and just slipping in something that would give us a sense. So we talked about this. We had that Billy Collins episode in the Poetry Space with Katie Dozier, the 2 episodes, and talking about, welcoming the reader in. One of the things he says, he has that, the big eye chart, the big E at the top of an eye chart to make sure you can read something, and it's really important to get that sense. What Billy does so often is, and it's sort of parodied frequently, but he'll say, I'm sitting here writing, I'm drinking this wine, I'm looking out the window. And just by doing that, it seems like it's sort of random rambling, but it's letting you feel like you're attuned and you're part of this conversation with somebody intimate. And that's just the one thing that's missing here. So calling it Transitions, that's an abstraction. And then but then the lines are fascinating, but there's no embodiment to it, as another way to say it. So it's our tradition to stay or not, or to weigh the weight. And I like that. There's a nice wordplay in that. I like the repetition and sort of transformation of way to weight. It happens as I speak and simultaneously stop speaking and simultaneously continue to speak, as I disappear and reappear, as though I've never disappeared at all. And so finding some sense, some little way in, like the field and the Mark Strand poem, would really help us connect more with this poem. So that's the first note. And then, with such a small poem, there aren't many little line edits and things. But I felt the as I disappeared here, I like this makes it a continuation. We repeat the as I disappear and reappear as though I never appeared at all. I think if we cut the as, these last 2 lines get stronger too. So let me just feel it's so short, I'll just read it again. But it's a tradition to stay or not, or to weigh the weight. It happens as I speak and simultaneously stop speaking and simultaneously continue to speak. I disappear and reappear as though I never disappeared at all. And I think that the directness and sort of more certainty of that by removing the as makes that ending a little stronger too. Again, similar to if we look back at the Keeping Things Whole, there's a confidence. There's a way that poems are this intimate form of communication where you're sort of, one soul whispering directly to another soul. And that is even more effective if you can build, first of all, you have to earn it. But then once you do, to have a confidence in what you're saying, in the wisdom of what you're saying, is really helpful and makes the poem have a lot more impact. And so here we all have reasons for moving. I move to keep things whole. Like that, the surety and the confidence with which that statement is said makes it feel more true, which makes the poem more impactful. Even though it's talking about this abstract, obscure kind of concept, it still feels... You feel a surety about it because of the confidence the poet has in the voice itself. And so I think that with traditions would be helpful. Let's see what everybody else is saying, though. Yeah, Mary Keating says if the title were changed to something like Conversations with My Wife. Yeah, something to set the place. I mean, the title is an easy way to do that. You know, Mark Strand and that adds the field, but it's helpful to add something to it. Let's see. Yeah, and Bryn Pope says, weigh the weight hints at internal conflict or burden. I like the idea. Let's see. Holly York says, I love this as ekphrastic. Did Bill say something earlier that I missed? Is it an ekphrastic poem? Yeah, let me scroll up because there are a lot of comments I haven't looked at. It's like a koan, says Sandra Fees. And yeah, Kimberly Gibson Tran says, interesting twists on the words. I want the poem to lean into the twists and say more about the word movements before we switch to new pairs and triplets. Yeah. Yeah, okay. Let's see. Yeah, so Richard Loberg says too, like others, I hunger for a grounding image. Yeah. Oh, here it is. Paul Buckner says, this poem became a part of a poem I submitted for an ekphrastic challenge a few months ago. It was the painting of the woman on the path with the birds. Painting of the woman on the path. Oh, yeah. That was like the April-ish, a very colorful one. Yeah. Yeah, interesting. Well, that maybe that's why there was a tendency not to need some kind of grounding, because it was sort of grounded by the painting itself. If you have the painting included, you can that can come to life. But I think we should add that into the painting. You know, add that detail of the painting somehow. Yeah. Let's see. Sorry, I talked too much and there was a bunch of comments, so I'm trying to find. Tara asks to follow up on Tom Barlow's question about parentheses. I agree with him. What's your feeling about them? And where's Tom's comment? Yeah, Tom Barlow says the parentheses seems out of place. I don't know. I mean, there's interesting. I think it's something you can do, and I think there's nothing wrong with it. It's an aside. It's a parenthetical aside. You know, a lot of times that would be, you know, shown with commas, showing, you know, pulling off that clause as an aside, but it's completely grammatically and, you know, correct to do it within a parentheses. And I think it works fine. It makes it feel like it's a different voice. I think that's my interpretation of a parentheses in a poem. Is it's like, even if it's somebody, you know, it's the same speaker, but it's like a different layer of their consciousness chiming in and sort of correcting, which is the way our brains kind of work. You know, we have that, as we talk about too much, probably The Master and His Emissary, that Ian McGilchrist book about the two parts of the bifurcated brain. But, you know, a lot of times when we think and talk, we say something and then the other part of ourselves says, wait a minute, that's not true, or wants to add to it or something. And that's the feel that it makes when you add. Instead of using to me, and I don't know if everybody else feels the same way, but to me, very often if it's a parenthetical, it feels a little bit more distant than commas separating it off would be. And so feels more like you're correcting it for yourself than correcting it for the reader. And I think that's my general interpretation of it. So I would use them if they're used that way, and that's something that you want to add to the poem. If not, then I would just use commas to set off the thing. Let's see. Anything else? Nancy Tennell. Let's see what that edit was. Where'd Nancy go? Because I see Paul likes the edit. I want to see what it is. Nancy says, what if the last line read as though I never appeared at all? Yeah, you know, that's a great edit, and I almost read it that way, Nancy. So I think, you know, I disappear and reappear as though I never appeared at all. I think that makes more logical sense, too. So I think that's a little edit. Yeah. Dick Westheimer says, I feel this is just too much thinking for me. And, yeah. And Dick too. So it's, you know, it's one of those poems. You know, some people love the keeping things whole and the kind of koan type poem. And when they're short poems and you can sort of gnaw on them and you enjoy thinking about them and playing with it, then it's a good example of that, I think. But then some people, that's not the kind of poem for them. And so then Schilling says, my head hurts a little. And yeah, you have to like that idea of your head hurting a little. But some people do, and I think it's always a good exercise to wrestle with a concept that's quite quite out of reach. So I like that. I like that component of it. I think transitions is the title. I think is more of a label than a functional title. So I think maybe we could use the title to get some kind of sense of the speaker, or just set the scene. There's another poem. Let me pull up this other one that I'm thinking of, and how he sets the scene. Oh, can I remember? Rattle.com. I can't remember who wrote it. Let's see. Funerals. It was about. A billboard. Let's see. There was a billboard. Let's see. Yeah, there's a George Ovid. And this is a little longer poem, but I feel like there's like a dialogue here, and we just let me read this. Why I Like Marriage by George Ovid. At breakfast, I tell my wife to bury me in a new suit. The gray one, she asks. Yes, with the pinstripes. Fine. And she sips her tea. This is what I like about marriage, the not being surprised part of it, as in how I can decide on my funeral attire, then read aloud a Times review of a restaurant in Paris that we will never visit, and a moment later suggest a walk in the snow. Why not? By lunchtime, I've decided against the gray suit and burial altogether, having seen a billboard for cremations, $850 complete. On second thought, I begin, and my wife will nod and sip her tea and say I know and mean it. But see how really there's sort of thoughts, the marriage part, because of the subject matter, fits and ties in. But just saying at breakfast, I tell my wife that beginning, if it wasn't at breakfast, I tell my wife, if it just said, I think I should be buried in a new suit, and we don't have that sense of scene, then we can't get to the connection as much as if we have that sense of scene. So just setting that up with where we are when we're thinking this, I think would help bring the poem to life a little more. So anyway, let's take a look at the other poem. Thanks for sharing that, Paul. And he had another one in a separate submission. So let's pull that up too. I wonder if that's short as well or not. And I remember everybody too who's watching, if you haven't clicked the like button yet, please do. We've got 3 times as many people watching live as have clicked like so far on YouTube. Yeah. Yeah. Maybe the marriage one, pulling it up, people are saying it's not quite the same. It's really not. But it's something where it was a poem where we set the stage really quickly, though, was the only point. And it was a little bit more different than I remembered it from what we're talking about. But still, that point about setting it up at breakfast, I tell my wife, is so important to let us know where we are. Okay, the other one, the other one here is Voice. It's a longer poem. Here we go. Voice. And again, this is Paul Buckner. Voice. What would you say if you truly believed you had a voice worth hearing? Maybe you could finally stop talking and just say whatever you choose to say to whoever you choose to say it to. And then they would know what you know. If you believed you had a voice worth hearing, you could ask people, what do you want to know? And they could tell you. And if you knew what they wanted to know, you could tell them. And if you believed you had a voice worth hearing, you could ask yourself, what do I want known? And who do I want to know it? And then you could think about it a while. Maybe very little, maybe nothing, maybe no one, maybe it's a secret, maybe it's special, because it's sacred and it's fucking scary. Maybe I don't want to say anything at all, or maybe we need to be okay with that, okay? Then again, maybe your voice is your ears and your eyes, listening and seeing with grace. Your voice is my embrace. Maybe there are enough voices and enough noises and not enough choices. Maybe there are enough noises and choices, but not enough voices. As our sounds resound, you can join me or ignore me or stomp on me, and I can love you. If you knew we had a voice that mattered, maybe we can finally stop. So this one's interesting too. Again, we're taking a look at Paul Buckner's poem. I say this one, I love the concision, the shortness, and how much was in the other poem. This one feels like it goes on. It's a similar subject matter, and it goes on farther, and I feel like it could be cut a lot. The one thing I really loved about it is the transition. I liked the then again, which is that sort of record scratch moment that Volta in a sonnet, then again, maybe your voice, and then we feel a sense that we've moved somewhere in the poem. So that part is nice, but it felt like it got a little, too much. It sort of spun its wheels a little in the beginning, and then after we got this nice section here in the end. So I think cutting down both of those would be a good idea. Clayton Clark says I like the jump, or maybe it's fucking scary. I think it's too long. Katie Scruggs Galloway says, through the entire poem, I wanted to be given the honest confession of a true answer to the opening question, kind of led by example situation, a lead by example situation to give the same call to action of the ending. Yeah, Maria Alberg says, I like the concept and where it wanders. Shape of Soup, nice through lines, confident and honest. A little trimming would make it more effective, yeah. Tom Barlow says the varied fonts and sizes could be used more often to balance their use. I interpreted that as not intentional. So I wonder, since Paul is here, if he can say that, because I kind of just read over them. We have the bold, and it feels like that's used for emphasis. Then we had this font too, which I felt sometimes you copy and paste things, and then especially in submittable, but other things that preview instead of load fully the documents, like email will do this too. If you pop up like a preview on Gmail, sometimes it doesn't load the content right. That's my interpretation of that. We do have a few poems, if it is intentional, we have a few poems with multiple fonts that are interesting, but they use them for very specific reasons, and I definitely would not do it on purpose in most poems. There has to be a really, really good reason. It's annoying to do as an editor, first of all, because you have to embed all the fonts in the file when you're printing it or whatever, or the website. And having, multiple fonts is a lot more legwork, and then it throws you out of the poem, I think, too. So setting things off with italics are better. Also, I was going to say about the bold, this feels like it's bolded for emphasis, but I avoid bolding and underlining for two different reasons. Bolding is hard to see for some people, especially, and depending on the font and like the weight of the font and the size of the font, sometimes it's really hard to see that something's bold. And you're always switching to fonts, and especially online, different viewers, different browsers show fonts differently. And so it makes it so it seems, people, instead of like seeing it as bold on purpose, they wonder if they're looking at something that's bold sometimes, and it's just not good. And also with underlines, you can't really underline things anymore because hyperlinks generally are underlined on the internet. And we sort of are trained to think there's a link there if it's underlined. And so you don't want to use underlines in poems really either. So everything, just italicize anything you want to set out would be my advice. Let's read the poem a little bit more closely because we haven't really done that yet. And look at line by line. Voice. What would you say if you truly believed you had a voice worth hearing? Maybe you could finally stop talking and just say whatever you choose to say to whoever you choose to say it, and then they would know what you know. And so right here, this is my first thought too. Again, this is the poem. The last poem is very abstract and distanced from any kind of sense of detail or concreteness, and it really loses some of the connection because of that. Even though the concepts are interesting and abstract and fun to wrestle with, it's still less engaging if you don't have something tangible to kind of feel as you go. So in this spot, and then they would know what you know. There's a real opportunity. You can feel even rhythmically the window, and then they know what you know. They know the blah blah blah. They know this and that. They know da da da. Like a little list of things that they know, and that those kind of additions can really make the poem come to life. That's an opportunity to add some concrete details, even though the poem is abstract and we're talking about a philosophical thing. Using examples like that when you get that list rhythm going is a way to make the poem feel concrete, even though it's still abstract. And so I think it's a missed opportunity to add some stuff there. And there's some other places you could do that too. If you believed you had a voice worth hearing, you could ask people, what do you want to know? And they could tell you. And if you knew what they wanted to know, you could tell them. And if you, let's see. So I'm, in this spot, I'm not sure I'm following. Maybe it's still like the last poem. It's too complicated to easily, suss. But I'm having a little trouble following the logic of this second statement, If you believed you had a voice worth hearing, you could ask people, what do you want to know? And they could tell you. And if you knew what they wanted to know, you could tell them. So if you knew what they wanted to know, there's something a little different about that. It's not just that you could tell them, it's that they would believe or care about what you told them or something, you know? I mean, you could tell them anyway. So there's a little weird, like it's not a requirement of the conditional, I guess, to say that way. So it felt a little off to me in just what it was actually saying. If you believed you had a voice worth hearing, you could ask yourself, what do I want known and who do I want to know it? And then you could think about it a while. And then we get this, which maybe this part maybe is the part that I felt like it went on too long. Maybe very little, maybe nothing, maybe no one. Maybe it's a secret, maybe it's special because it's sacred and it's fucking scary. Maybe I don't want to say anything at all, and maybe we need to be okay with that, okay? So it's written, so this feels like the list of things is too long, and it's also written, is it the only thing in quotes? So someone's speaking here. Well, I guess there's the hypothetical speaker here. But it doesn't feel, to me, it doesn't feel like it's spoken text. It feels like it's still in the voice of the poem, I guess. It doesn't feel like we're part of a dialogue. And so I think the option's there to just delete the quotes as we're shrinking it too. I think it should be half the size maybe. And then let it just run with the thoughts that the speaker's thinking, because I think that makes more sense. Or the other option is to go the other way and actually make it more dialogue, like I guess maybe the marriage poem we looked at a little bit by George Ovitt. Anyway, then again, maybe your voice is your ears and our eyes, listening and seeing with grace. I like that, listening and seeing with grace. I like the concept here. That's a nice turn. And there's the shift in tone, too, at the turn is nice. Your voice is my embrace. And again, I think, your voice is my embrace gives an opportunity, again, to make a run at some kind of, more examples. Like, how is it? Your voice is my embrace. Your voice is in my blah, 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 my this and that, Some kind of metaphor, or some kind of way to extend that into concrete, to make the abstract concrete. And to make the chaos ordered. That's what art and poetry is really about. So it's an opportunity. You could push that a little deeper, that thought. Maybe, but then instead we move on. Maybe there are enough voices and enough noises and not enough choices. Maybe there are enough noises and choices, but not enough voices. So all the rhyme in this one, the noises, choices, voices, it's really not in tune with the rest of the poem. It feels, very much self-conscious about the sounds of the poem, whereas the speaker wasn't to this point. And repeating it feels a little like Susie even. So I think that's too much, and it's just too distracting. Maybe there's a different poem in here, maybe some kind of like villanelle or something where you're repeating these lines and playing with them would be fun, but it feels like the wrong poem for those two lines. As our sounds resound, and again, I think we're playing with sound, so we do the same thing. As our sounds resound, you can join me or ignore me or stomp on me, and I can love you. If you knew we had a voice that mattered, maybe we can finally stop. And that part's interesting too. So I like the concept of the poem, and I like what it's about, and the through line, as somebody said. Sarah Rashid Khan says, the poem feels like the poet needs to think more deeply about why they are intrigued by this concept and draw a mind map to list doors to enter the poem through. Yeah, that's a great way to put it. Jesse A. says, I'm thinking about Lee Young Lee's poems in his collection Behind My Eyes, where he's bringing up philosophical questions, and it's just him and his wife going back and forth about those ideas. Yeah, that's a great one to put. And Sandra Fees, what I miss are images or sensory details. Okay, well, we've talked about this poem enough. Thanks so much for sharing these two, Paul. Hope this is helpful. That was Voice by Paul Buckner. And we'll go on, and we have Sandra Fees, too, I believe, right? Didn't I grab? Let's see. Yeah, Sandra Fees. And so this was sent. She sent this in June. The Calligrapher we've got. And another poem, Sphinx Moths. So we have some details there. And let's see if there's any questions. My poems tend, this is what Sandra says, my poems tend to be thoughtful and quiet with an emphasis on language and image. What takes poems like these to the next level? How can I give them a little more oomph? I think these two poems may need more interesting titles. Okay, so there's some good things to think about. Again, Sandra Fee's poems tend to be thoughtful and quiet with an emphasis on languages and image. And what can take these to the next level? So that's the thing we're mostly thinking about. And here is the Calligrapher. Also, if you want more of Sandra Fee's work, she got her website here, which most people don't include, which is nice. SandraFees.com. SandraFees.com. All right. Anyway, the Calligrapher. Let's take a look. The Calligrapher. The day my friend is dying, I learn my bones are too thin, not enough sunlight or egg yolks. I learn it's never too late to be the hummingbird, whip-stitched to bee-balm and suckling twilight. That what I might be doesn't require a stepladder or work pants, but might. I'd like to believe that compassion's polished caliper is enough. George Eliot says it's never too late to be what you might have been. I might have been an astronaut, afloat beyond the known, or the Milky Way itself, chalking spirals of curiosity across the night sky. I might have left a mark, a star, a life. So already a very nice poem, The Calligrapher. Sandra mentioned maybe the titles could do more, and I don't know. I'm not. It's interesting. I'm trying to see how the title relates. It's a bit of a leap, maybe, and I don't know. I kind of like it if we can find the way it does. But there's nice interjections, nice movement. I like the ending too, and then good details throughout. Keeps us engaged. Yeah. Shape of Soup says, frankly, no notes. Yeah. PMB even says, nice poem. Love this, says Holly York. Yeah, this is nice. Let's read it again. Yeah, Dick Westheimer too. The Calligrapher. The day my friend is dying, I learn my bones are too thin, not enough sunlight or egg yolks. I learn it's never too late to be the hummingbird, whip-stitched to bee-balm and suckling twilight. See, really nice lines. And we talked about how in the last poem, just by adding that repetition, there's sort of an opening for adding more detail and making the poem feel concrete. And that's actually the exact move Sandra does here. So I learned my bones are too thin, not enough sunlight or egg yolks. We could move on past that, but it builds intensity to repeat. I learn, and then we get more detail, and we can go, because we sort of established what we're talking about, repeating that, letting us know that we're repeating the same subject, but we're clarifying and deepening it, allows us to move into a much more symbolic language, which makes our understanding of the meaning deepen, which is, again, the point of poetry. So it's a nice move to do. That's why I suggested it in the last poem. And here, Sandra Fees does it. So I learn it's never too late to be the hummingbird, whip-stitched to bee-balm and suckling twilight. And what I might be doesn't require a stepladder. I love, too, we get this really abstract, the hummingbird whip-stitched to bee-balm and suckling twilight. Like, I'm not quite sure what that means. I like the sounds. It's fun to read, but it's a little bit of a stretch for my brain. And then we go from that to the sort of more simple and quotidian. What I might be doesn't require a stepladder or work pants, but might. So there's some humor in that, too. So I like that. I like to believe that compassion's polished caliper is enough, and that's a great line. That's a quotable line, and there are surprisingly few quotable lines in a poem. Just in poetry generally, like pulling out the best quote from a poem to post on social media is harder than you'd think it would be, I guess, at first glance. So it's nice to be a quotable quote there. George Eliot says it's never too late to be what you might have been. So again, we pull some reference in there. So we're sort of broadening the scope of our contemplation. I might have been an astronaut afloat beyond the unknown, or the Milky Way itself, chalking spirals of curiosity across the night sky. I might have left a mark, a star, a life. And a really great ending, that downshift there into being really serious, and the sort of the sadness, the emotion that comes out by making that realization toward the end. One word, curiosity, felt like a little off to me. Is that really the right word? Shocking spirals of curiosity across the night sky? I feel like maybe there's a different word. And I wonder, I'm not sure. My only interpretation is, let's see. I mean, the Milky Way is chalking spirals of curiosity. So that's the one callback, I think, to the calligrapher. But then my other thought was maybe the friend was a calligrapher. That there's something to do with that. It feels like it's a little bit. It highlights that aspect a little more than we should. So maybe the title can be something better. Yeah. Let's see. Richard Lorberg says, I'm a little uneasy that the dying friend feels shunted to the background for what feels like a narrative of self-contemplation. Well, it's part of the human experience, though, to, think about dying in the face of someone else's death. You don't have to have every poem be a grief poem for the person dying. And there's not some kind of moral necessity to, say that, Yeah, to say that you're upset about it, that could be a different poem. Rosanna says, I guess the end line is referencing the friend dying and thoughts of mortality. Yeah. Mary King says, I love this poem. My only suggestion was changing the line, but might. It takes me out of the poem and the assuredness of the speaker. Maybe you could title it with something about the bees and being. Yeah. Katie Scruggs Galloway says, really lovely. I wondered at the end how it tied to your friend's death, then realized its second read, a mark. The calligrapher. Oh yeah. A mark, a star, a life. Yeah. Well, that's interesting. See if there's any other suggestions. Yeah, Kimberly Gibson Trent says, I like the calligrapher leap, even if it's far, could be called to God, writing lives. Yeah. Terry Mesnick McMahon says, what about the first line is the title instead, The Day My Friend Is Dying? Yeah, that might, the uneasiness that, who was it? Was it Doug that felt? The uneasiness about not really being about the friend's death. That can be solved by that title, The Day My Friend Is Dying. And so we have that as the setting and the kind of the extra layer that was the impetus for this poem. And that frames it, but then allows us maybe to feel like we don't have to talk about it because it's the context that swirls around these thoughts. And maybe that is a good title suggestion, and play with that and see how that feels, I'd say. But jumping right in, The Day My Friend Is Dying. I learned my bones are too thin, not enough yolks, not enough sunlight or egg yolks. I learned it's never too late to be the hummingbird. So you can just jump right in there. I think it's a good suggestion. Chelsea McClellan though says, I don't know. I like chalking spirals of curiosity. Maybe think of throwing words into a page in curiosity like we do. And other means humans do this. Yeah. I like the concept that it's being reached for with that word. It feels like there might be a better word. Yeah. PME says, the cartographer. Jamie Thomas says, I'm so in love with this poem that I don't care that I'm not sure what the title means. It makes me want to go over and over it, which would be an absolute pleasure either way. Yeah, I think maybe the calligrapher, maybe we could just expand on the idea of the calligrapher. And that's another thing we could do. Like how everyone is a calligrapher, or like just a little bit more detail about it. Because what it is we're like wondering who the calligrapher is. And I think that's what the title does for me. The calligrapher makes me wonder who is the calligrapher. And then we realize that it's sort of the speaker wanting to be a calligrapher in the universe, to be able to make their mark, to make the mark of their life on the universe. And so it's like an aspiration to be a calligrapher. And for some reason, just realizing who the calligrapher would be doesn't feel quite as satisfying. So maybe there's just a way to phrase the calligrapher a little more to make that connection a little stronger. That's my my thoughts about it. Let's see. Yeah. Anyway. Yeah. I'll just try to read everyone's comments. Yeah. All right. Well, anyway, those are thoughts. Everybody likes a good poem, and I like it too. So thanks for sharing that. Let's take a look at the other one. Sphinx Moths. I should kind of hang on a second. That was a little off. Oh, I have to do that. Sorry. Maybe like that. No, wait, I don't want to do that. So there's so much to play with here behind the scenes that you guys can't see. And I want to get everything on the page the right way. But the window's all, that's the wrong way. There's something on this computer. The window size, for some reason, changes the size of this window, which is too much info. But on the old computer, it didn't. And so I keep fiddling around with things more than I normally do. Anyway, Sphinx Moths. Overnight they enter where floorboard slats don't quite meet, unable to reverse course, two crisscross the screen, seeking a new escape. One huddles in the thicket of blackout patio curtains. So I'm going to shrink this more. It's just annoying me. Okay, that's better. Let me start over. Sphinx moths. Overnight they enter, where floorboard slats don't quite meet. Unable to reverse course, two crisscross the screen, seeking a new escape. One huddles in the thicket of blackout patio curtains. A few dead ones have curled up the way ideas do when they don't shake loose from their old enclosures. At daybreak, I trap the living one by one in a plastic cup, whose broad mouth I cover with an oversized postcard from Window Genie. The fervent imagination beats fast and hard. I unlatch the door, hoist each moth alight, and that's freedom, I think. My eyes follow each body's arc, the lurch into the Liriotrope, whose foliage canopies the earth, bent so near to the ears of perception. So again, a very nice poem. I like the, and how to make, Sandra Fees was worried in the comment, that they're sort of, how did she phrase it? Let me look back again. It was, the poems tend to be thoughtful and quiet with an emphasis on language and image. What makes poems like these, what takes them to the next level? Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think that is the next level. I mean, that's good writing, is the things you mentioned. I like the sense of it. So anyway, Sphinx Moths. Again, maybe the title could be more interesting. Where do we go? Right here. Sphinx Moths. And there are a few little notes I have, but again, I think it's just an overall really nice poem. So Beautiful Again says Hammett. Shape of Soup 2, nice detail, says Cindy Putnam Guntherman. Very clear and grounded imagery, yeah. Shape of Soup meticulously structured. I actually love the enjambment. Very nice. Tara Meslick McMahon says Sphinx Moths, difficult in the mouth, but I like the poem. Bryn Pope loves it too. Yeah. Shape of Soup says, I think the title is perfect. Yeah. Kendall Gibson Trent says the next level is personal buy-in, I think. The first of these two had that, the second, I think, less. Yeah. Sandra Fee says hard to say the title. And, yeah. Yeah, Sarah Rashid Khan says there are certain words that don't give the brain an easy entry into understanding what is being said. That could just be me. Yeah, and I think that too. So I think we should maybe think about a different title. I wanted to look up this poem left me wanting to look up a couple things. So Sphinx moths themselves. Is there something specific about how they look? Here we can see there's a Sphinx moth. Let's look at a whole like page of them. There's these guys. So very, very elaborate moths. Oop. I'm not sure why they're called Sphinx moths, though. Do they look like the Sphinx? I don't know, but interesting anyway. And then there was a couple other words I want to look up too. But let's read the poem a little more in depth and a little more line by line. Sphinx moths. And think too, maybe a better title. It is hard to say that, and it's not the most exciting title that makes me want to read the poem. Like another poem about it's sort of, the poem does more than the title suggests in a way that makes it less excited to read it than you should be with how good the poem is, I guess. Overnight they enter, where floorboard slats don't quite meet. Unable to reverse course, two crisscross the screen, seeking a new escape. I really do. I love the descriptions of what's going on. One huddles in the thicket of blackout patio curtains. It's really nice to call that a thicket. A few dead ones have curled up the way ideas do when they can't shake loose from their old enclosures. I love the way ideas do. That's a really great line. At daybreak, I trap the living one by one in a plastic cup, whose broad mouth I cover with an oversized postcard from Window Genie. The Window Genie seemed out of place. I think the poem is a very, has a very timeless, sort of not set in that level of specificity. And I think maybe what's added, and it's a bit of a sort of a humorous to mention that. I think maybe, it's the kind of place where not having a brand and not having a proper noun works better. Either just cutting from Window Genie or, from a plumbing company or something, just leaving it a little more general, because I think that it fits more with the voice of the poem to not name it that specifically. I don't know why I said plumbing. It's a window washing. I mean, you just say with an oversized postcard for window washing. I'm not sure that's necessary though. Either way, but anyway, the fervent imagination beats fast and hard. And the fervent imagination beats fast and hard. I think this one, it's a really nice metaphor for what's going on in there, but we don't see it as well. You notice how in the other really great one, a few dead ones have curled up the way ideas do when they can't shake loose from their old enclosures. So that the metaphor has this really strong image tied to it. But then later, it's a similarly interesting line as far as the metaphor goes. The fevered imagination beats hard and fast. But if we had the fevered imagination of their wings or and then describe the wing a little bit, and then beats hard and fast, then we get to see the image too, and it makes a stronger feeling there. So I think maybe adding a little detail in between those two lines would make that, because at first it feels fast and hard is sort of a cliched type phrase. And you sort of miss the fact that it's actually a really interesting metaphor that's going on, where the beating of the sort of desperate moth is similar to that, a fervent imagination. I keep saying fevered, sorry, fervent imagination. Anyway, I unlatch the door, hoist each moth alight. I really like that image too of hoisting it out of the cup. And that's freedom, I think. My eyes follow each body's arc. The lurch into the lee, or I don't even know. I have never seen this word before, so I want to look that up. So a lyriope, how would you say it? Is that a plant? Oh, it is. It's a lily type plant in the garden. I don't know. I think that, to me, I mean, maybe it's just me, and more people know that word, but I think that word's a little too foreign. From just regular speech to just be dropped in there. It kind of pulls you out. It's too obscure a word, I should say. And so maybe a different, and then also, I'm looking at these pictures and also the other word is lily turf for the lyriope, apparently. It's a more grass-like plant. I can show you on the screen. It's a more grass-like plant than I was imagining, and with the arc being, and then it mentions whose foliage canopies the earth, bent so near. It feels like the image, without knowing that word, is going to be higher up because of the body's arc. You kind of like, you're throwing it, and then it's like, I imagine it being up, and then the canopy you imagine being up too. Although it's kind of the point that the canopy is so low. So maybe, because it's bent so near to the ears of perception. And again, that bent so near to the ears of perception, great sounds, great music in that line. So, I don't know. I think maybe the lyriope is a little bit much to digest. Yeah. Hal York says lyriope is everywhere in my yard. Mascari is more familiar, says Paul Buckner. Yeah. Yeah, so Kimberly Gibson Trent is not in love with ending on an abstract word. I'd rather end on ears. I like the ears of perception. I like how much that makes you think and makes you want to reread the poem. So I think that works. Also, I think Sphinx Moth is a title, reading it again. It's not a poem you want to have in here. A word you want to have in there because it's hard to say. And you don't want to trip over that. And it's one of those things kind of like the lyriope. So it's nice to have it in the title, and then you don't have to have it in the poem. I think that kind of works because that's what the poems are about. It helps set it without having to say it. Yeah. Oh, Mary Keating says, we are all getting ads. Is that something to do with Rattle or with us? I'm sorry you're getting ads. Yeah. I thought I'd try that once just to see what happens and see, because I played with the settings one time like 5 years ago, and I wondered if it was going to like pop up during the live stream and how much revenue it would generate and how annoying it would be. So I thought I would turn it on once and see if anybody complains or notices, or I don't know, because it does feel, it's like we're a nonprofit. We want to give out as much stuff as we can. But also, it's an opportunity to make revenue for the nonprofit. You might want to try that too. So I thought every once in a while I'd try. But yeah, usually it doesn't have it. I can turn it off anytime too for the reruns. But I was kind of wondering what would happen, especially too because we're probably gonna have more viewers than normal on this Monday's episode because we have announcing the Rattle Poetry Prize winner. So I think we're gonna get more. Yeah, it's pretty terrible. I've got 7 ads. Wow. Okay. Well, that's a lot of ads. See, there's no way. They let you choose low, medium, or heavy on the ads. And I picked medium just because I have no idea. So yeah. Yeah. Okay. Well, anyway, we'll see what happens. Oh, yeah, some people have YouTube Premium too. PMB says, I like ads. I was also wondering what the ads would be. I wonder what they would pick. But I have no idea how much money, and it's probably not worth it. Probably not going to do it anymore. I just, you got to test things out sometimes. Yeah, 4 ads for Kimberly. Okay, well, thanks for all that feedback. Well, I'll let you know next week how much money we raise. I'm guessing like $5, but we'll see. All right. Well, let's, I don't know if I have anything more to say. These are really nice poems, Sandra. A few things we could click through. And, yeah. Okay. Yeah. I mean, there are a few live streams I watch, just by the way, and they don't have ads, but then they have ads if you miss it live. So I was wondering if that would happen too. But anyway, all right, let's see if fun. We'll do one random. Thanks, Frank, for sharing this. Again, nice poem, Sandra. The pair of them are good. I hope we had some help, but they're both really good. So not a whole lot to add, just to compliment. All right. We go back and just look at, we have a few minutes and we'll just try to knock out some of those super old ones in the queue. So we're going back to March 14th. And Dennis Usden, who he comes on the Rattlecast sometimes on the prompt lines. Here he goes with Up Down. Up Down. I am 12 years old in 1958, carrying 60 pounds of extra weight. My father tells me I look like a tackle for the New York Giants. My mother says I am fat. The skinny diet doctor turns his head away from me. You only need to lose 50 pounds. Then you won't be sweating all the time. The cure is in glass caged bins, silos 5 feet full of colored capsules, stacked wall to wall. My mom buys the orange ones for me, the red or yellow not strong enough. Thoughts racing, I zoom around the house. The vacuum can't keep up. 200 pages of Don Quixote in 30 minutes, face flush after run. Yell in class, teacher whispers, shut up. Now slinking down in bed, sob. Exhausted into sadness, unbelievable heaviness of my being. Eyes drooping, teacher lifts my head off the desk. F in conduct. I hate these drugs. I hate my obese self more. Yeah, so Up Down. Yeah, interesting poem. Yeah. Up Down. So we set we set the poem, we set the scene pretty well. I am up. Oops. I opened up a program that takes a long time to load back. So, all right. We set the stage pretty well. I'm 12 years old in 1958, carrying 60 extra pounds of weight. I wonder if, again, we've mentioned this before. Sorry, just look at the comment. It's nice to, I think maybe Up Down, maybe just getting this information into the title, and sort of having a title not maybe quite like this, but 12 years old, 1958, carrying 60 extra pounds of weight or something like that. It feels a little bit like an info dump in the poem and a little outside the voice. The voice of the poem really starts with the second stanza. So maybe we could make and the Up Down doesn't really add a whole lot. I mean, we understand what you're talking about by the end, but it's not like some kind of like revelation or deepening of the poem. It's just like, oh, that was what the title was referring to. So I think maybe adding the title, adding these details in some way in the title, and then jumping in. My father tells me I look like a tackle for the New York Giants. Yeah. Paul Buckner said, like the choice to make the memory present tense. Yeah, some people said like intense or, yeah. Sheba Soup said intense. Rachel Grieve, a lot of energy. And I think I agree. With D. Coleman, the repetition adds energy and it works well. But then D. Coleman says, for me, the repetition worked to a point and then it felt like too much. I think it got to be a little too much. Yeah. Okay, well, let's read it again. And again, I would just get this info in the title and just start. My father tells me I look like a tackle for the New York Giants. My mother says I am fat. The skinny diet doctor turns his head away from me. You only need to lose 50 pounds. Then you won't be sweating all the time. The cure is in glass caged bins. 5 silos 5 feet high, full of colored capsules stacked wall to wall. My mom buys the orange ones for me. The red or yellow not strong enough. Thoughts racing. I zoom around the house. The vacuum can't keep up. 200 pages of Don Quixote in 30 minutes. Face flush after run. Yell in class. Teacher whispers, shut up. Now slinking down in bed. Sob. See, this is where it gets to be too much, I think. And maybe one of the things we can do, it feels to be like, it starts to feel like a little bit of a gimmick, but you could play with it a little bit maybe by having like, 2 different shut ups, and maybe that can, like if you have one shut up, you're not using punctuation here, but with that, you could have one with a period, one with an exclamation point. Maybe that feels like that's like 2 separate statements. Yeah. Yeah. And Shauna Bowling says, poor kid's being fed speed. Yeah, I wonder if another option for the title, because I wonder what drug, I know it's some kind of like upper, and we reference it a bit here, but I wonder if maybe the title of the drug would be a good title. Let's see. Yeah, Kimberly Gibson Tram says, yes, the sob stands as the start of the melodrama, yeah. Kimberly Gibson Tram says, just keeping the facts is gut-wrenching enough, yeah. Yeah, exactly. Okay. Well, a lot of great comments, and it's all how I feel, too. Jamie Thomas says, this feels very diaristic and personal. Some level of abstraction to the universal would strengthen this. Yeah. I don't know. I like the personal nature of this one myself. Sheba Soup says 2 on the nose for a drug title. Yeah, that could be. Sandra Fee says the conceit of this poem is heartbreaking and it's really got my attention. Yeah. Okay, well. Did I finish reading the whole thing? Now slinking down in bed, sob. Exhausted into sadness. Unbelievable heaviness of my being. Eyes drooping. Teacher lifts my head off the desk. F in conduct. I hate these drugs. I hate my obese self more. Yeah, so yeah, I got distracted by the sob and then reread the second 3 stanzas. I do think it just the story itself. It hasn't found its ending yet. It is like sort of summarizing at the end, and the story itself is the heartbreaking one. Let's go back. And we'll look at the way ending on an image can work. We'll close out with this one. This is one that I bring up frequently, but it's probably been a couple years since I brought this one up. It's one of my favorite poems from Rattle, which is this. And look at how it's a different topic completely. But feel how the emotion lives in the specific details. And here we're ending on, eyes drooping, teacher lifts my head off the desk, F in conduct. So we're ending on the F in conduct, and then the statement, I hate these drugs, I hate my obese self more. And how can we find a way to end on an image that says that without saying it? And that's the way it gets really strong. And let's look at this poem as an example of that. Oops, where did it go? Right here. This is 1969 by Tony Gloagler. It's one of the all-time most popular poems at Rattle, and there's a reason why, because it's a really powerful poem. Tony Gloagler, 1969. And it's similar, looking back at this emotional memory, basically. But feel how staying within the image makes the poem so strong. Okay, at the very end, like note the last image. Okay, 1969. My brother enlisted in the winter. I pitched for the 6th grade Indians, and coach said I was almost as good as Johnny. My mother fingered rosary beads, watched Cronkite say, and that's the way it is. I smoked my first and last cigarette. My father kept his promise, washed Johnny's Mustang every weekend. Brenda Whitson taught me how to French kiss in her basement. Sundays we went to 10 o'clock mass, dipped hands in holy water, genuflected, walked down the aisle and received communion. Cleon Jones got down on one knee, caught the last out, and the Mets won the World Series. 2 white-gloved Marines rang the bell, stood on our stoop. My father watched their car pull away, then locked the wooden door. I went to our room, climbed into the top bunk, pounded a hard ball into his pillow. My mother found her Bible, took out my brother's letters, put them in the pocket of her blue robe. My father started Johnny's car, revved the engine until every tool hanging in the garage shook. Yeah. And so this powerful ending, but that ending, instead of saying, it could have said we were all filled with sadness and the whole house shook with our sadness or something like that. But instead, we just end the scene. My father started Johnny's car, revved the engine until every tool hanging in the garage shook. And it's just such a great, great ending. Yeah. Yeah. Sheba Soup says this is more explicitly narrative-driven, though. It's not visceral. Yeah. Yeah. Well, anyway, yeah, I mean, that's the kind of thing to go for, though. And really, if you break down the poem, there are great sentences, and the details that Tony chooses are wonderful, but it ends up being, it's just a list of things that happened in 1969 in chronological order, and each thing gets a sentence, basically. My brother enlisted in the winter, and we're starting in the winter. He enlisted, then I pitched for the 6th grade Indians in the spring, and coach said I was almost as good as him. My mother fingered rosary beads. We watched Walter Cronkite on the TV. We're just going through a list of what happened. And then, and it's just I French kissed. I went to mass. They went to win the World Series. We're just going through chronologically one sentence at a time some of the things, and then the Marines appear. And then this is what happened then. And it's like it's sort of like, it's what's not said, it's the power of just the image speaking for itself that makes this poem work so well. And all that you read as a reader between the lines of even piecing together what happened and all the emotion. None of the emotion is explicit. It just says what happened. And that is the most powerful thing you can do as a writer. So good advice there. And that's one thing you should think about with that poem. All right, that's going to wrap up the critique of the week. Thanks everybody for sharing all your work. It was 3 really nice poets sharing what they've got. I'm going to mark that so I don't forget that we went through it for Dennis Usden. And let's see. Now, coming up on the Rattlecast, like we've mentioned a few times, is a special episode. Monday, we are announcing... Oops, that's the wrong one. That was last week's guest. It was great. Monday, we're announcing the Rattle Poetry Prize winners. We're going to figure out who they actually are this weekend. We're announced like we always do. I think I mentioned on the Rattlecast, it might be after the fact. I'm going to notify everybody. I'm not going to do it that way. I'm going to send out the notifications in the morning, Monday morning. And so everybody will know whether or not they won, but we'll meet as many of the winners who can appear on the show. And hopefully the main winner can. And it's going to be fun revealing it that way. We sort of did a little bit of this last year, and it was fun to do it that way. We thought we'd expand on it. It was that episode. We had Dorian Lux on as the guest, so it was a good one. But then we had a whole segment, and Arthur, what's his name? The winner last year. You know him. He also the car wash poet. I can't remember his last name right now. Anyway. Yeah, he was there, and he found out in real time that he won, which was really fun. It's not gonna be that quite surprising, but the poets won't know which poem that won. I think that we've decided on that. So we'll be sending all the notifications out Monday, and we'll be joined by a bunch of the winners read their poems. So you don't have to wait until the winter, and we'll try out. It should be a lot of fun. That's Rattlecast 309. Oh yeah, and the prompt for this episode was an award. An obscure award. Oh, I gotta find it so I can say the wording right. It was pick a specific obscure award and write a poem about it. A specific obscure award. They actually exist. Find those, write a poem about it. That's your prompt. The Rattle Poetry Prize winners will be the guests. That's Rattlecast 309, Monday, September 15th, regular time, 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. Hope you have a great weekend. We'll talk to you later. Goodbye.